Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. Today is another installment in my Question Everything series, and this one is on mud floods and underground tunnels in your town. And this was actually inspired by a comment that I received, I believe, on my Tartaria video, and someone actually asked if I had ever considered looking for evidence of a local mud flood or evidence of underground tunnels in my town. And it was funny that they asked that because just a few days before that, I was walking on the trail with my kids and began to notice things that I thought might possibly be evidence of a mud flood. And I had been taking pictures of it, and I had actually been posting them on Instagram. And then when the commenter mentioned that a lot of towns have underground tunnels, that really intrigued me because I had also found out that there is a cave that is almost directly underneath my house. It's pretty far down, but it's almost directly underneath my house. And it turns out that, yeah, there are quarry tunnels that start in that cave and run throughout pretty much my whole town. So here's just a quick look at what I'm talking about, first of all. And this is kind of like a quick intro into what all this is about. I shot some footage today of the actual area of the actual trail, so I'm going to be sharing with that in a minute. This is just kind of a brief history so you understand what I'm talking about. So in 1845, it says that two Welshmen, William Roberts and Nelson LeBar, were traveling in this area, and they brought into existence a great industry, and incidentally the town of which we write. And it says that while making the journey on foot from Easton to Mock Chunk by the old stage route along the Lehigh, they discovered at one of their resting places, and it was opposite the site of Slatington, some pieces of stone leaning against the barn of Peter Heimbach. So right here, what you see in this picture, this is the opening to the cave. This is the tunnel quarry. So a short time later, Owen Jones and William Roberts leased the land from Jonas Kern. And I'm going to add that in another article I read that they bought the tunnel quarry, which I found interesting that here it says that they leased the land. Another article, though, says that they bought the tunnel quarry. And I was thinking, so if they bought the tunnel quarry, were the tunnels already there? Or was this something that they just built on their own? I don't know. It's just a question that I have. Anyway, let's just move on. They opened a quarry in the hill on the east side of what later became known as Welshtown Road. It was the first slate operation, and the tunnel quarry operated until about 1886. I actually think that's a typo because if you actually look at the sign, it says that it operated until 1866 on this sign here. So I think 1886 is a typo. I believe that it operated from 1845 until 1866. And then it says that it just tells what the slate was used for school slates and back blackboards. And I actually read somewhere that Benjamin Franklin actually used these areas for his slate. And it just talks about when this opened. But what I actually found really interesting right here was talking about it again. And right here, the tunnel quarry was arguably, so right there, the tunnel quarry was arguably the most well-known of the sources of slate for the industry. Although formerly renamed the Mantle Quarry later, it was equipped with pushcart tracks like those in an old coal mine, and the tunnel stretched under the streets of Slatington. I vaguely remember my grandmother telling me that a lot of the houses in town had doors in their basements by which they could access these tunnels, which might have been how many of the slate workers went to and from their jobs every day. That really intrigued me because a lot of these stories of underground tunnels in different towns have the same setup where there are actual doors from people's houses that go into these tunnels. So it just got the wheels turning in my head. I went back to that original article that said that the tunnel quarries were purchased, and I thought, okay, well, were the tunnels already there when they purchased it? And then we have this talking about basement doors that opened right into the tunnel. So anyway, that's where I'm going to just stop this part of my video, and we're just going to get into the footage and we'll talk about this some more. So this wall right here is actually what began my curiosity about mudflood. This is actually across from my house, and if you can see in this picture, this wall is kind of underneath, kind of pushed into the grassy hill. So what you just saw down there was a more modernized wall that was built in front of this one, but I'm wondering, why is this pushed into the hill like this? Could this have been possible evidence of the land sliding down over top of an original wall? So this right here is the entrance to the Slate Heritage Trail, and this is where we are going to find Bedbug Cave and the tunnel quarry and possible evidence of a mud flood. And this actually I noticed when I was walking my kids to a creek that they used to like to go swimming at, and I started noticing things like this. And if you look closely at them, they almost look like they're man-made. Now it might not be. I'm not a geologist, but I was intrigued, so I started looking a little bit closer at the things along the path. Now we're going to get up a little bit further down the line, and what you are going to start seeing is, I'm not sure what is used to make it, but it almost looks like they're using some sort of a brick, maybe slate, to build an old wall. Now if you look here, okay, that is a tree root that you're looking at. See, that's a tree. Underneath that surely looks like at least the inside of a former wall. How would that get like that? Did the land slide down on top of it? Could it be evidence of a mud flood? Could it be evidence of a mudslide? I think that it's certainly evidence of something, because you don't normally see what looks like the remains of a wall underneath a tree root. And this is something that you see a lot of the further down that we walk through this path. We're going to see lots of things that start to look like that, and a lot of them actually look even more like walls than what that one did. And you know, they could have been originally built. See, there's some more right there. They could have been built originally by the Lenni Lenape Indians, because the Lenni Lenape Indians did live in this region before the Welsh started settling it. But again, this is something that, how did all of this land kind of slide down on top of these structures? That's why I'm just like, mudflood is screaming in my head. I could be wrong, but this is, you know, that's the whole point of questioning things. It's okay to question things, and it's much better than just ignoring things and not being curious about this world. So you can't see it as well in this picture, but that is another area where there is some type of wall structure. And so anyway, yeah, so I started to really want to look into the whole tunnel quarry thing once I got that comment about looking into underground tunnels. Because when I first learned about Bedbug Cave, I thought, wow, that's really cool. There's a cave underneath my house. But when I first learned about it, I had no idea that there were actual tunnels in the cave. And you think about, okay, it's a quarry tunnel. It's not that interesting. But the tunnel itself actually runs, it runs into other quarries that they began building around town. And so these tunnels take up, I would say, almost all of underneath our town. Now, my town is only like 1.4 square miles, but yeah, they take up a lot. So that's another wall right there. Now that one is obviously a wall, because there is some, or at least a foundation of an old building, and that's concrete there. So you know that that's what that is there. And that could possibly be, now there are a couple stories about what these remains of the buildings are. One story is that it is an old mattress factory, which is how Bedbug Cave got its name, you know, bed bugs, mattresses. Or there are other stories that there were actually 2 slate factories that were built here, and that it was when the slate factories burned down, I believe, or in 1898, that was when the entrance to Bedbug Cave was actually discovered. So, you know, that I find really interesting, because if Bedbug Cave, and here this just tells you a little bit about Bedbug Cave, it gives you a map of like all of the area that is that all the area that it takes up underneath the town. But anyway, yeah, so if Bedbug Cave was opened from 1845 until 1866, what happened that people totally forgot about it, and that it had to be rediscovered in 1898 when a building burned down? That, yeah, it just, the whole thing doesn't really make sense to me. It's not that long of a period of time that passed that you wouldn't, you would have forgotten that that quarry existed. So here we are. I have a few of my kids with me, and we're walking up the path to get to Bedbug Cave. And so what I'm going to be showing you, I'm going to be panning the camera and just showing you just the huge hills, mountains of slate that you see going up. That's also the remains of another building there. But actually being at this place, oh, that's a worm that my daughter wanted me to film. Actually being at this place in person is astounding. So you see those, that I believe, I'm not positive, but I believe that's slate. And it doesn't look like it here. It is high. I mean, it is really, really high. And it is a marvel to look at. There's Bedbug Cave itself. That's the entrance right there. And unfortunately, right now, I can't go in there. I don't feel comfortable going in there just because I have some issues with my back and my knees right now. But it's like a vertical climb to get down inside of it. And you then have to climb vertically back out. But the inside of the cave itself, it's a huge cavern in there. And again, it covers all underneath the town. And there's even like an underwater lake in there. And I'm going to leave a link in the description box to a video that shows what it looks like inside. I'm hoping that sometime in the future I'll be able to get there. Maybe my husband will go down with me. I'd feel a lot safer going down there if he were with me. He was at work when I shot this. But someday I hope to go down there. But inside, it's just cavernous and it's beautiful. And as I'm thinking about all of these tunnels and the story of the doors from the basements that go directly into the tunnel, I keep looking at how low this tunnel is compared to how high most of the land is. Now, if you know anything about the topography of this area, this is a relatively low section of land, and then the tunnel goes down even lower. But all of the houses, or at least most of the houses in the area, are set way up high compared to this tunnel system. So I just kept thinking to myself, see, that's just showing again how high it is. And again, my house is sitting like up on top. Like I zoomed up to the top a few times. My house is like up there somewhere. That's how high my house is. So yeah, these tunnels are underneath my house. But I was thinking, these houses around here are too high. Even if it's in the basement, even their basements are too high to have a door that opens up into the tunnels. It just doesn't seem to work. And then I just started thinking more and more about this, possible mud flood evidence that I've been looking at. And, this tunnel quarry, again, opened in 1845, closed in 1866. So I decided, what, I'm going to look up when my house was built and a few of the other houses on my street. Well, my house and all the houses that I checked on my street were built in 1890. So they were built after the tunnel quarry was closed. And so one notion that actually going through my head is it possible that my house was built after some sort of massive mudslide, or after some sort of landslide, after some sort of mud flood, that possibly my house and the other houses are built on another level of houses? Could there possibly be another level of houses below ours that were somehow covered, and those would be the houses that would be low enough to have doors that open up into these tunnels? This is all speculation, and this is something that I got a I got the phone number for a local historian from the librarian, so I'm hoping to get in touch with him sometime. She said that he's retired, and she said that if there's anyone who knows anything about this town, it's him. So I'm hoping that he can answer some questions for me about this. But, you know, I went online, I tried to look up if there was a history of, you know, a bad mudslide or a bad landslide in this region, and nothing. I saw absolutely nothing. The problem is that the town itself was established, I believe, in the 1870s. And finding information before the establishment of the town is really tough. But on top of that, when it comes to mudfloods, it's not really something that that is written down. It's not something that people take an account of. Very often, these mudfloods themselves, it's just a mystery. What causes them? Who caused them? If that would be the issue. But yeah, there's really no written evidence, and so what is happening is that we're kind of being left to just guess, because if they're not writing down what is happening and they're not passing the history orally from one generation to another, yeah, we are kind of left now wondering what is going on, what is all of this about. So anyway, and another interesting thing is that there's another the remains. I think that's another remains of a building. But if you look at how those stones are built in there, that's the same way that it looked under the tree root, but it was under a smaller scale. So yeah, that definitely under the tree root, that was built. That was man-made. By who? I don't know. For what? I don't know. But I do know that it certainly does look like that tree slid down and was on top of that. And I am wondering if that is exactly what happened here, that everything kind of shifted downwards. And also another interesting thing is that there is a theory that there was a very massive mud flood sometime possibly around 1850, and that's just a guess, like give or take. And it's interesting that that's right around the time that the quarry closed in 1866. And like I mentioned before, to me, I find it odd that somehow they forgot that tunnel quarry existed. I mean, that employed a lot of people. I read that the quarries, they employed like 1,000 people, and that was before the town itself was established. But that's a lot of employment. How did they forget about that opening? It says they discovered the opening in 1898 after this building burned down. And I'm thinking, what? How did they forget? And you know, that will kind of make sense. Anyway, so what I'm looking at here is I've been wondering, as I'm looking at all of this stuff on the side, could this possibly be what mud looks like when it kind of piles up and is left dry somewhere after a long period of time? Because to me, it certainly looks like it could be dried mud that just sat there on a pile for a long time. Well, over 100 years, almost 200 years now, just kind of sat there. And again, I'm not a geologist, but I was talking to my daughter about it. My 16-year-old daughter was also with me. She just wasn't on camera. She was hiding. But I said to her, well, this is the slate belt. Maybe this is just slate. And she said, but Mom, do trees grow in slate? And I said, you know what? You're right. There are trees growing in that. Trees would grow in mud, not in slate. Interesting. All right, so I just wanted to show you some footage of what it actually looks like in there in Bedbug Cave and in the tunnels. This is not my footage. I found this on YouTube. I'm going to leave a link in the description box for the entire video and for a few others that I found. My daughter and son actually tried to go down there and get some footage for me, but the light that attaches to my phone, it kept going out, and my daughter was getting really freaked out because it's so dark down there. And I said to her, don't worry about it. You don't have to do it. But just look into your town's history. You could have stuff like this right under your feet and not even know it. That's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one over on Instagram because YouTube disables my comments. And if you like my work, you can check out my Patreon page. Have a great day.